Hey everybody, welcome into the Fantasy Effect. This is episode 57. We're doing a listener mailbag, so we got some good questions. Excited to talk about that. We're brought to you by Dynasty Theory in partnership with Dynasty Daddy and Fantasy Football Infinity. As you can tell if you're watching on YouTube, it's just Holler and I here tonight. Ron just is either still in the hospital or is just barely coming home. He had some kiddos, so we wish him the best. Hopefully he gets some rest but Holler and here are excited. We got a good show, and what's up, man?
What's up? Yeah, we heard some good things from Ron, so everything's the babies came, and we're good. Yeah, we'll wait for him to give us some updates for next week. But yeah, I just
Yeah,
want to say thanks to the Dynasty Theory Discord for the guys giving us some questions here. I think it's gonna be a good show. We've got some good questions and some good players to talk about.
for sure. So we have a little bit of news. I think first of all, nothing major, but Jimmy Garoppolo got suspended 2 games for violating the NFL substance abuse policy, and it's like, bro, if you got benched while taking, the like PEDs, like what? How bad are you without them? Like, my goodness.
Yep.
So
Not good. And then I don't know if we talked about it already, but I think it's worth noting that the Seahawks grabbed the offensive coordinator from University of Washington,
yeah,
and I think that's going to be a really good hire. I think it's unfortunate for Alabama, but I think it's going to be a really good hire for all those players in Seattle because that guy's good. We could start
yeah,
the rumors of
Michael
what's his
Penix,
name? Yeah, Michael Penix to Seattle. But
love it.
we'll see. But I think that's a really, really good hire. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, for sure. Staying in Seattle, they I think so. Seattle a few days ago, they basically needed to either like cut Gino
Oh
or
yeah.
if he's on the roster now, he's like his guaranteed money kicks in. So it looks like they're
Yep.
gonna roll with Gino at least for another year. So that'll be exciting. I think that's good for the passing game there rather
Yep.
than some kind of a rookie. That's probably an
And
upgrade.
and I think for for someone like JSN it's really good because in
Hmm.
at the University of Washington they use multiple wide receivers and they had
Like three
a couple
really good
really good
ones.
ones. Yeah. And they
Mhm.
used them all. I know Jalen McMillan was injured, but they used when he was healthy and playing, they all three of them got the ball. So, I would like to think Gino is better than Michael Penix. And so, I think JSN is someone that's going to have really benefit from um, that offensive coordinator.
That's true. And then there's a possibility that Lockett won't be there next year too. I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of rumors that he might be a cap casualty. There was rumors
Yep.
last year too about that, but I was just pulling up the target share that they had in Washington for the Huskies last year. So Roma Dunze obviously had most of it with
Hmm.
140. Jalen Polk had 108, and McMillan had 63, which was a little skewed because he was injured
Yeah.
for quite a bit. But there was plenty of room for all of them there. So
Yeah. Lock it to Kansas City. West says, "I'm okay. I'm good with that. Whatever."
yeah, that would probably be good for his value.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know what Kansas City's cap numbers are right now, but I don't know
Yeah.
if they can make that
Well, I
work.
think they're
Actually,
definitely a
pretty good.
candidate to get a wide receiver for sure. So just
Yeah,
speculate who.
they need someone. Sounds like Mike Evans may be on the move. It looks like they're
Yeah.
not going to give him the franchise tag, but they're working on trying to get a deal. But I don't know, man. That's a little that makes me nervous. If they don't
Yep.
bring him back, it makes me really nervous for Baker.
Yep. I was going to say that. And it's good for Chris Godwin, but I don't know if Chris Godwin will be the same without a counterpart there. So
Yeah,
I still think I still like Chris Godwin, but I'm not going to in startups and I might if that does happen, I might look to move him, but he'll probably be a little bit down if he does not Mike Evans does not sign again. West would also love Evans in Kansas City. Yeah. I think
so is it
West
just anybody in
yeah,
Kansas City? Is
that's
that
that's what I was gonna say as well. So yeah, we'll see. I think that's about all the news so far. It's quiet time. It's just all the news right now is all rumors, so don't want to say too
well?
much.
That's all there is to go on
Yeah,
right now. I'm
true.
I'm curious though with Mike Evans if he's looking more for somewhere to go get more championships? He got one with Brady, or is he looking just to get a nice payday? I think that'll be pretty telling because
Yes.
desperate teams that could with a
Yeah,
lot
I think
of pay him
for 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 me, I think he should be going after championships now. He's got 10 1,000-yard seasons. Like he's a really good. He's put in a really good um like he's put together a really good career, so I think he just should go out and try to get a few more championships, but we'll see.
We will see. All
Yeah,
right, should we jump into the
agree,
mail?
Wes. Let's do it.
Okay, just real quick though, we're talking about Kansas City's bad receivers, like they didn't just like win the Super Bowl 2
Yeah.
weeks ago. So let's,
So what?
I
Let's not
mean,
whine
let's
too much.
let's keep it in check a little bit.
All right, this first question is good. Go ahead.
Yeah, this actually comes from Mitch from the Dynasty Theory Pod, but basically we just said is a rushing quarterback still the for all of you old Nintendo nerds out there, the Konami code, which is basically like a super cheat.
Yep.
With so many rushing quarterbacks entering the league every year, like is it still like basically that's still like a cheat code, or is it just kind of like this is the status quo now?
So for me, I'm kind of in the same boat as I think this is what maybe was Ron's notes, but
This was me. Yeah,
I kind of think it's more of like the status quo, right? There's a lot of um, running quarterbacks, but also, um, you know, like you put like the top 12 quarterbacks, and like there's only a few of them, in my opinion, that like make a huge difference with their rushing, right? And so, like, I think all quarterbacks need to be somewhat mobile. There's only a few of the older guys, in my opinion, that are purely pocket passers. And so,
hmm
like someone like Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins, those are the two that really pop in my head as like those are the guys that are purely the pocket passers. And yes, they both tore their ACL and whatever, but I just think those to me are the older quarterbacks are the ones that are like the purely the pocket passers. And so somebody like Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Tua, like those guys all are running the ball. Lamar Jackson, all of them are running the ball a bit. And so I personally think this is just part of where where the NFL is going and what all the new quarterbacks coming in, they need to have like a component of their game to have a little bit of running.
For sure, and I think too, if you don't have that rushing upside, your ceiling is pretty capped at
Yep.
like a back end QB1, like an upper echelon like QB2. If you look like some of the guys in the back of the QB1 range, it was like Tua, Baker, CJ Stroud, who all didn't really run the ball.
Yep.
Matt Stafford, Derek Carr were kind of in that top end of the QB2s. All guys who really don't run ever.
Yep.
And then I think Jared Goff is the one that over the last 2 years, he finished QB7 this last year, and he had only 21 rushing yards. So, but him and Tua actually led the league in passing yards this last year, but they were still like a full 8 points per game behind Josh Allen was. So it's just kind of goes to show like if you're not going to get any rushing yards or rushing touchdowns, you basically have to be just like hyper efficient in the passing game and have a throw for a ton of yards and a ton of touchdowns. Otherwise, it's just it doesn't matter. And like guys like Justin Fields, he pretty much is always in that back end QB1, top end QB2, and
Yep.
he's not anything up like maybe an average passer is probably
Yeah.
a generous way of saying it. Just because he runs the ball so well.
Yeah. And so I just went over to FantasyCalc real quick and just the current top 10 wide receivers on there is Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is the first one that to me is like, okay, he doesn't run the ball a lot, but he still can run the ball, right?
Yeah,
All those guys I've just said so far, Justin Herbert maybe a little bit as well as not, but he still can also run the ball. Anthony Richardson is QB8. Caleb Williams, we'll talk about him in a second. QB9, Jordan Love, QB10. Trevor Lawrence, 11, Kyler Murray, and then Fields is 13, right? So all 13 of those guys can run the ball, right? And so to me, this is not to more. This is I agree is more the status quo. Like you have to have a component of your game be running in order to be a top 10, top 5 quarterback, fantasy or even in the NFL.
For sure. And then if just looking at some of the top quarterbacks coming in the 24 class, right? Like Caleb Williams, the last 2 years, he averaged 490 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns, 10 rushing touchdowns. Drake May was
Yep.
740 yards, 8 rushing touchdowns. Jaden Daniels over 1,100 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns. Even JJ McCarthy, who you don't think of as a athletic guy, was averaging 371 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. Bo Nix, 387 and 10. So all of these guys really have Michael Penix actually is the one who isn't,
Yeah.
who doesn't run the ball at all, and you can kind of see in mocks he's kind of fallen out of
Yep.
favor with NFL, and I mean, it's not because he's not a good passer because he is. It's I mean, I think part of it is he's a statue,
Yep.
and injury concerns too, but
I agree. Yeah, injury, and then he's also a little bit older. But like one that stands out for me is I don't love Drake May, but I feel like that rushing upside for him is what's helping him stay up
mhm,
top, that top three quarterbacks, right? I know JJ McCarthy's creeping in a bit. I'm not a huge JJ McCarthy fan, but to me, like those numbers, you know, speak for themselves. That rushing needs to be a component of your game for you to be a top quarterback in the NFL.
for sure. All right, this next one here comes from Roy. So basically, well, I'll just kind of read his question here. So we all know this time of year when vet running backs are cheap because it's the offseason, but we also don't know, we don't want to buy vets yet until free agency. Ideally, the draft, so we know where these guys are playing.
Yep.
But he said also he's bored and he wants to make trades. So he's like, all right, who am I going after here? I'll let you tackle this one first.
Yeah. So my one of my favorite guys, the older ones, is Kamara. He's cheap. He's going late in startups. So to me, that kind of tells me that he's like probably a mid. If you want to just do straight up draft pick, probably a mid second rounder, right? Maybe 2.6 to 2.8. That's someone that's a a pick I'd be feel comfortable. So say I was in
Hmm.
the maybe I lost in the semi or I was in the first round of the playoffs and I want to bolster my running back room. And I think, all right, I have 2.7, right? I feel like Kamara is somebody that's going to continue to get the ball, continue to get those catches. And I just think that he's going to be somebody that they're going to use, even though I know Kendra Miller will be part of the game next year. Um, I just still feel that Kamara will definitely be is that a huge piece of that offense in New Orleans. And then another one that I don't want to steal the other ones, but I do love James Conner. I'll let you talk a little bit about him. And then Monty. Monty is always a really good one. I think Ron put this guy in there.
Hmm.
Clearly Detroit Lion, but I still think Monty is also going to get the same amount of work he had this year. Those two running backs in
Do you?
Detroit. I just I feel like for them to have the same kind of offense that they did this year, they should. I don't know I
Yeah.
haven't looked into it enough to say that I feel confident either way right now, but I still think he is a buy because they should be using him that same way. And I still think he's pretty cheap. I want to take a look at while you're going over it. I want to see kind of who recently where Monty's been going in startups, and that would probably give me a little better idea of what kind of rookie pick. I'm guessing he would probably be more of like a late first, early second, right? So he's not more of a cheaper vet, but he's somebody that is not as old as some of our other vets, but I think is still somebody that's going to produce well. Especially with this running back class being a little bit weaker, he's somebody that I think you could go out and kind of that will really help you kind of for that championship run.
Yeah, so I think Montgomery definitely has a little more longevity than some of these other
Yes.
guys we're talking about, so that's why he's a little more expensive. But
Yeah.
you're also, you're getting probably a good, 2, 3 years rather than just like one, maybe two on
Yep.
some of these guys. But the two that I brought up were James Conner and Aaron Jones. They're actually kind of in that same tier as Alvin Kamara. It's kind of in that 207 to 212 range. And I was kind of thinking about it too, like what happens if you were a contender, you might have traded your second already. So try to go with the working theory of all right, let's start with a 25 second and go from
Yep.
there. a 25 seconds straight up probably isn't getting it done. So
Yeah.
adding maybe a 24 third, maybe you have a third that wasn't yours, and that's kind of more like mid.
Yep.
You could try to throw that in there, or a player in that area. And the kind of the names I came up with were, throw in like a Wandale Robinson or like a Chuba Hubbard or a Zamir White, someone that um may not, they had some production, a little bit of hype last year. I think Wandale's gotten a little bit of hype because I think
Yep.
it was CD Lamb who was talking
Yeah.
about how he liked Wandale the other day. Zamir White. We know Josh Jacobs is a free agent, and there's rumors he's not come back to Vegas. So you can kind of start telling yourself a tale of, I can buy low on Zamir White and ship off Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, James Conner. Um, so those are the guys I like. I think Aaron Jones and Connor probably each have one good year left in them.
Yeah.
So this isn't you're here for a good time, not a long time with those guys.
Yep.
But I think if you're close, they could really bolster your lineup and help you get through some bye weeks, and maybe take you over the edge there to get a
Yeah.
championship. So
So in one of our recent startups, it was Cole's charity league, and I got James Conner at 11.5. Somebody that I felt was,
yeah,
could give me one, maybe two, like, because he's 28, right? So he's going on year 8. So
yeah.
he's kind of the back end of those running back 8 years for him. And so I just think probably only one, like you said already, 1 year left. One other guy before we move on is I like Joe Mixon. I know there's a little bit of questions where if he's going to come back to um,
Mm,
Cincinnati or not, but I just think you know, he as well as Kamara just produces, right? He is RB17 on FantasyCalc right now. Isaiah Pacheco, somebody above him. Josh Jacobs is RB13. I think I would definitely take Jacobs over Joe Mixon. He's much younger as well. But like he, I think, and then also in JB's tiers, he is in tier 6, RB16 through 24. So he might be a little bit more expensive, kind of like Monty, that late first. But if say you have that 112, right, and you have a really, really good wide receiver room, your quarterbacks are set, and you're on the clock or it's close to draft day after the NFL draft, and you're like, okay, I think I need a running back. I think Mixon or Monty or somebody would be someone good that like you could ship off that 112. Not only saying if that wide receiver room is firm, right? Because this wide receiver
sure.
class is really, really good, and you have 2 really good quarterbacks. Maybe you even have a third, because those are the 2 areas that I would be, at 112 looking at if I was a championship team. So I feel like that would be, you know, a good spot for Mixon. But I have a good feeling about him coming in next year.
Do you do you feel like, are you worried at all about his like kind of decline? Because he did kind of look like he wasn't quite the same guy. At least,
Yeah, a little bit. But what I want to like lean towards is the Bengals altogether were just not the same
worse.
team this year. And so I think he might not get the same amount of touches and all, but I still think he will produce. Because shoot, I forget his name off the top of my head. Um,
Chase Brown.
Yes, thank you. Chase Brown is there. So I think it might be actually good for him. Say he comes back to Cincinnati, they use a little bit of both of them. Chase Brown is obviously a different running back from Joe Mixon, but I think Joe Mixon will continue to be that red zone guy. And so, I think he will get those touchdowns. He will get the work there. And I think he would be somebody that if you're like just need either a flex guy or maybe you're really weak at RB2, with how bad this I wouldn't say bad, but how weak this running back class is, I think, I would feel okay shipping off that 112 for Joe Mixon.
That's fair. And the running back class isn't. I don't know if bad's the right word,
Yeah,
but there's not like, so we've been spoiled the last few years. We've had like
yes.
the Bijan Robinsons, the Jameer Gibbs. I mean, frankly, even like Najee Harris, we were all really excited about him. Javonte Williams, we were stoked for. Like some of those guys, like Brees Hall.
Yeah.
We were Kenneth Walker. We were stoked for all these guys. They had a ceiling that they could be at,
Yeah.
a top an RB1. The guys coming in this year, their ceiling is probably like mid to back end RB2s,
Yeah.
which can still be useful on your team, but I mean, you're not going to be stoked about it. It's like when you draft Brian Robinson Jr., you're like, I know I'm going to get production here, but I'm not like stoked
Yeah.
about it.
Exactly. And so I think it also might take some time, like for them to, it all depends on landing spots for sure for these running backs, I feel like this year. And so I think, it could be some of these guys that come out and take a little bit of time. Maybe the second half of the season, they're really, really good. But it's just going to be kind of figuring out which guy that is. And, you know, someone like a Jonathan Brooks or an
I was just
Estime
gonna say probably
these
Brooks.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, these guys are like, not someone that you're like not a darling, but bad is not the right word to say at all. Just I think it's a weaker class than what we're used to, and I think we've been, like you
Mhm.
said, spoiled.
We have been. And Audric Estime, that's my boy, Eddie Lacy Jr.
Yeah,
All right. All right.
I wonder who would win in the eating contest.
Probably probably Lacy.
Yeah,
All
for
right.
sure. I agree.
All right. This next one comes in from BF Teach. It's Anthony Richardson or Jaden Daniels. Straight up, who do you got?
This one's tough because they're both young. Uh, they do a lot of the same things, but I think for me, and I think also for you, this is kind of another question somebody else had, so it's going to be a little bit me and you kind of lean towards a lot of the same guys. And
Hmm.
so I'm gonna go with Jaden Daniels, not only because he is the newer guy and not AR got injured last year, but I think the biggest thing is Jaden Daniel is a better passer, right? And so they both can run the
100%.
ball well, and so I think what I really, really like about Jaden Daniels is like his progression over the last couple of years. I know he went from ASU to
Yeah.
LSU, but I just like he was solid in ASU, and then he's got
He,
even better
he
and
started as a
at
true
LSU.
freshman.
Yeah. And so he's played all 4 years, I think it is. And so I just feel like for
I think
me,
he's been there
it's
for longer.
yeah, because I think he's the same age as Penix,
Him
right?
and Bo Nix, I think, are about
Oh,
the
Bo
same
Nix.
age.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Penix is even older.
Oh,
And
for
so it's
sure.
just for me. I mean, I still like Anthony Richardson. He has a ton of upside. That running upside or that rushing upside is insane. But I just for me, I think if I'm picking straight up one or the other, I'm taking Jaden Daniels because of that passing.
Yeah. So I think Anthony Richardson is fantasy relevant because of his rushing floor,
Yeah.
similar to a way that Justin Fields is.
Yep.
But I think Jaden Daniels is like a legitimate NFL quarterback who also can run, kind of like more in terms of like a Lamar Jackson, where they can
Yeah.
throw the ball pretty well, but they also they run. The thing I
Mhm.
will say about Jaden Daniels, this dude takes the most Looney Tunes ass hits I've ever seen in my life. Watching his highlight reels or just like film, like he'll start running and I don't know if he thinks he's like bigger than he is, like he has a Napoleon complex or something. But I saw him get just like suplexed by
Yeah.
linebackers left and right. And like to his credit, I mean, he didn't really ever miss time in college. He stayed pretty healthy, but like he's slim. Like if you watch him, he's listed at 6'4", 210. I have questions if he played over 200 pounds.
Yeah.
Like
That's
he didn't look like it, right?
that's what I was gonna say is one of my like worries with him is just how I wouldn't say small, but he needs to pack on some pounds for sure. I know the SEC defense is solid, but it's definitely not the NFL defense, right? And
No,
so if he's going to take those same hits, he's going to be injured just like Anthony Richardson. So they both have some learning to do, and so, but at the end of the day, I think the Jaden Daniels passing is what's going to get him farther than Anthony Richardson. Anthony, I'm hoping, because I have a good amount of Anthony Richardson, and there's a lot of hope for him, and the Colts team. But I just think, you know, at the end of the day, give me Jaden Daniels.
for sure. The thing with Richardson too, that's just a little concerning is his biggest question mark coming in was he's a very questionable passer,
Yeah.
and he didn't get a ton. Like he's fairly raw in terms of that, and he really
Yep.
needs time in the at quarterback, and he didn't get it because he got hurt. So he played 4 games. He left 2 of those.
Yeah.
One with a concussion and one with the shoulder injury that knocked him out. And the 2 games he started and finished, his passing was, I mean, one game was pretty good, right? He had a 64 percent completion percentage. The other one was 44%. So like it was pretty Jekyll and Hyde, and I think you might get that for him. And it's really like, are we ever going to get the stability and the passing from him, or is it always going to be he's kind of a so passer but he's going to be propped up because he can run the ball so well?
Yeah. And so like this, now I'm looking at FantasyCalc as well with quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson's up there at QB8. So I may go look at shopping him for a plus. Like maybe wait till after like Jaden Daniels is actually drafted and there's some rookie drafts, because Jaden Daniels down at QB 18. I think he'll move up once he gets on a team and there's a little more, the question marks are answered a bit. But I just that big a difference between the two, to me, I think is way too much. And so, I do think that Anthony Richardson probably is a little safer down at like the QB 11 or 12 range. But there's still a lot of upside with his running is probably what's propping up there to that top 10.
Would you take Anthony Richardson or the 102 just straight up?
The 102, and I would take
probably Daniels.
Yeah, I'd probably take Daniels, but I might even just go with Marvin Harrison Jr.
Big Marv.
I think it would depend. Like I don't want the cop out answer depending on my team, but those I would take the 102 over Anthony Richardson, because they give me either Daniels or Marvin Harrison. So
FantasyCalc has Richardson over Caleb Williams right now, which I think is
there's 8 and 9, and so yep, I agree.
They are back to back, but technically he is still higher. So
that's true. That's true.
I phrased it a little clickbaity, but it's I don't know. That feels. I think there's a disconnect there. I feel like I definitely want to maybe shop Anthony Richardson and see if he can.
So I felt like I was just scrolling over there and I was like, oh wow, that's we talked about it earlier, but it didn't register when I said he was QB8, and now we're talking about it. It's like, okay, that's a little high.
For sure. All right, this next one comes in from Clough, and I skipped over it because I realized something about when you're reading the questions off the show doc. We make fun of Ron all the time, but it happened to me too. So
yeah, it's hard.
All right, it's reading stuff, guys. All right, Clough said, "Who are the players that you guys disagree on the most, and kind of where do we come down on those guys?" So I'll let you kick us off.
Well, let's give some love to Ron. The biggest one is Bo Nix. Ron disagrees. Yeah, he hates Bo Nix, and there's some truth behind it, but I just think there is some upside with Bo Nix, and so I don't love him as much as Spanky does, but I don't hate him as much as Ron. So I'm kind of right in the middle. But I think a big one, and I was behind him last offseason. I really liked Bieniemy going to Washington last year, and so Brian Robinson. And he ended up having a really solid year. Now, don't get me wrong, he's not this RB1 crazy good, like going to get you all these points. But like I said, when I talked about him, he was going to be a solid RB2, and that's what he was. And he even included a little bit of pass catching, right? And I think part of the Spanky was pushing back on me was like, we think that Sam Howell is going to take away a lot of that rushing. But maybe it was Sam Howell, maybe it's just the way how that team operated. But to me, Brian Robinson ended up having a really, really, really good year for him. And so I think right now he also still is a buy. He's super cheap. He is down at RB 28, right? And so that's right outside the RB2 range. And I think he's below Jonathan Brooks. That's somebody we talked about like a couple minutes ago, and I think that's a little crazy. But like, he's a buy, and I do think he's going to have the same kind of year as he did last year. Low RB2, get you some points, be a really, really good flex play for you. would be okay if you go over more of a wide receiver build and he's your RB2. I wouldn't love it, but hey, if you have like 5 really good wide receivers and you built 0 RB, I think that would be okay. But for me, Brian Robinson, I think will have the same type of year, especially with Kingsbury coming in as offensive coordinator. I didn't get time to do it, but I wanted to see Dan Quinn, how how his offenses were. I don't think Atlanta had that good of a running back when Dan Quinn was there. So I think it was just like
No,
mediocre.
it was Tevin Coleman and
Yeah.
who was the other one that was there with him? There was 2 of them that were basically the same.
Oh, was it like Mike Davis? I
Mike
think
Davis might have been
there,
right
but
behind
yeah.
both of them, but yeah.
But so yeah, this one, I'll be honest, this question was tough because me and Spanky, lean into like we agree on a lot of players.
Oh, Devontae
Ron,
Freeman was the other one.
oh okay. Ron doesn't win many championships, so he doesn't, he doesn't like very. I'm just kidding. He doesn't. But Ron, like, I feel like he goes outside the box a little bit more than Spanky and I do, and so that's what we love him. So Brian Robinson is the one that kind of came back to me when I was thinking about this question.
Yeah, for sure. Brian Robinson, I think I'm definitely lower on him than you are, but running back 28 feels stupid
Yeah,
low.
that's super low.
But let me ask you this. So Antonio Gibson was there with him, who's we know is not the greatest. He's now a free agent. Do you have any concerns that this coaching staff, offensive coordinator, they want to bring in maybe one of their own guys? Because Brian Robinson, I think he went in the back of the 3rd round a couple
Yeah.
of years ago, so it wasn't like they gave up a ton to get him. Are
So
you concerned at all that they bring someone else in that starts taking away some of that work?
I do. I think if they were to bring in somebody that is more of an all around back, I think he showed that he can also catch the ball. So he did progress, and that's what I kind of like about. I like to see that, but I do worry about a little bit. A whole new, like, everything is new for Washington, right? Nobody there drafted him. New offensive coordinator, new head coach. He's still under contract, so part of me feels like they're gonna use him, but I would. That's the one caution I have if I were to go out and try to buy some Brian Robinson. I think I already have a good amount, so I think I'm just gonna kind of hold. But yeah, I was gonna bring that up. Is like Antonio Gibson's on his way out. He's nobody to be worried about, right? And so that was another reason why I think I really liked him coming into this year. Is like, okay, it's only Antonio Gibson. They didn't really draft anybody. They drafted Chris Rodriguez, which is okay, whatever. But I just that is my one worry, is that if the new regime grabs their own running back, and if they do grab somebody in the draft, then I would say get him cheap now because he'll probably be good in the first half of the season, and then try to flip him.
Yeah, totally fair. The guy I brought up is Bryce Young. So I think probably on this podcast I kind of talked about
Yeah.
how Bryce Young was horrible, but I'm kind of talking myself into it a little bit. So what really the biggest argument I have in favor of Bryce Young, and I actually took him pretty high in a startup recently. I took him, let's see, at the top of the 6th round in a Superflex startup. So which it was one of those situations where I was like, I waited on quarterbacks. I kind of took some tight ends earlier because it was a start 2 tight end with a tight end premium. So I got a little wonky with my roster build, but anyways, I took Bryce Young at the top of the 6th round, and then I kind of started talking myself into him a little bit. But here's the crux of the argument. He had some of the worst receivers that
Yep.
an NFL roster has ever rostered, this last year. Like Jonathan Mingo couldn't get open to save his life. Adam Thielen's out there. He's, 3 years past his prime. And if say what you want, like Adam Thielen still had a good season, but he was the only guy getting open for him. So Bryce Young, like he had no one to throw to. He had a terrible offensive line. He had just like a put together coaching staff that really didn't do him any favors. That coaching staff's out the door. They got kicked out during the season. it kind of reminded me a little bit, not quite as extreme, but a little bit of like when Urban Meyer was there during Trevor Lawrence's rookie season. And I just thought, he was a really good prospect coming in. He was a 101 overall pick, right, in the NFL draft. Like, they're not just going to give up on the kid after one
Yep.
season where there was constant, just crap. He had some flashes. Like, if you think back to that Green Bay game, I mean, he lit up Green Bay's defense pretty good with a cast of characters. The Panthers have a decent amount of capital. They have some. They have the first pick in the second round, where I think they might use on either offensive lineman or a receiver, depending on what they do during free agency. But I just think it's a situation where I think that his situation has to get better. Like, it can't get worse, right?
Yeah.
And it's a his price is pretty low right now, and I think he's worth a gamble. Like, you can pretty much throw like a back end, like a 111, 112 for him, and probably get him in a lot of cases. You might have to add a little extra on there to kind of get the deal across the line, but I mean, if you have the 110, 111 right now in a rookie draft, like, you're not getting a quarterback, and if it maybe will be like a JJ McCarthy, which I mean, give me Bryce Young over him all day,
Yeah.
right? So
I agree with that. And in JB's tiers, he's tier 7, 109. I don't love him. One big, argument against you is, he had one good game, December 24th. I just pulled up his stats, but like he threw over 200 yards, 5 games, right? And
a
so,
stud.
yeah. So I understand his wide receivers sucked, right? His offensive line sucked, his coaching staff sucked. But
Mhm.
I caution it a little bit. I do like the coach they brought in, that offensive coordinator from Tampa Bay. I think he's a good
Yeah,
young coach. I think he will help him a lot. But I just worry. So at the end of the day, I think it would totally depend on where you're getting him, what you're paying for him. I think the sixth round of a startup is really not bad. I think it's a little bit early for some people, but if if he has upside there, like if he plays better, and it's not that hard to do. If he plays better, you're gonna think back on, oh, I got him in the sixth round. Okay, that's pretty darn good, right? And so I think it all will depend on where you get him and what you pay for him, right? And I agree. I would only take. Honestly, it would depend on where Drake May goes. I know he like could be a little bit like I
interesting.
Bryce Young was a better prospect, like you said. They spent that
100%.
101 on him, and they traded a bunch for him. I don't love Drake May. So if I could see, like, I want to do this right now, but like I would only feel comfortable putting like Caleb Williams and um Jaden Daniels over him. I think as of right now, I'd probably take Drake May over him as well. But say Drake May goes to the Patriots, I wouldn't feel very good about that. That's
Fair.
not an offensive coaching staff, and so um I still think there's upside to Bryce Young, just kind of like what you said.
I do too. I think, I mean, his situation's it's already improved because Dave Canales is the one that coming over from Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
He got that best. I mean, that was the best year we ever seen out of Baker Mayfield,
Yep.
and I think Canales is the biggest part of it, right? And so, um, they have. I just pulled up the numbers. The Panthers have like almost
Figured.
27 million in cap
Yeah.
space. I think they have some contract restructuring they can do to get a little bit more space. There are guys like they've been rumored to being one of the teams that's going to go out and get spend on a wide receiver. I'd love it if they get like a legitimate target for him,
Yep.
somebody with that can actually separate and get open, and catch the ball. I mean, Jonathan Mingo's been horrible. They
Yeah.
need some help there. But I think just like a competent modern NFL scheme will help him as well, and hopefully they get some better blocking in front of him. He had one of the worst offensive lines in front of him too, so they,
Yeah.
they they really just did him no favors. And I
Yep.
think, like, when's the last time a rookie quarterback who went 101 in the NFL draft has been this low, like one season after they're starting. Like
Yeah,
even Trevor
that's
Lawrence didn't drop this bad. Like
yeah.
I feel like we overcorrected a little bit. He's not at QB 21. I mean, he's down there
Yeah.
with like Kirk Cousins, who's 35, right? So
Yep.
man,
That's what I was just looking at. He's 21, like I have a hard time putting him over any of these guys above. Like I would put him over Deshaun Watson's, here maybe I'll put him at
yeah,
QB 20. But like I just said, Drake May, depending on where he goes, Drake May's up there at QB 16. JD Daniels, we talked about it already, QB 18. Like I could feel comfortable putting in him there at QB 18 and dropping Jared Goff and Drake May, right? And so, it's not we're nitpicking right now, but I think there is upside. There's the Panthers are starting to put some pieces, like the first domino was a good coach. Now let's see what they do in free agency and the draft.
for sure. And I think the upside with Bryce Young, kind of like you mentioned, like the guys around him, like Deshaun Watson, Jared Goff, those guys kind of are who they are. Kirk Cousins, right?
Yep.
So they're already at their value, right? Bryce
Yeah.
Young. Now, granted, he could just completely flame out and be nothing and just, die on your roster, a la Trey Lance. But he also has the possibility that he could take a Trevor Lawrence kind of arc and go back up towards kind of a back end, QB1 if,
Yep.
he has a nice
Absolutely.
sophomore season. So I think he's worth the risk. I think I would trade up to the 108, maybe
Yeah.
107.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's right where JB has him in his tiers, 109. So yeah, I would feel comfortable 108, 109 trading him.
For sure. Cool. All right. I think we talked about Bryce Young enough. So Jake H from the Discord asked, give us one player at each position that's not currently in the top 10 at their position that we expect to be there next year. So I'll let you
All right.
tackle that first.
So I think you put in all these guys down here, Spanky. So let me see if I can pull a quarterback real quick. We talked about it a little bit already. I think I'm going to go with let's go with a little bit of a hottie take and go Tua, right?
Baby.
I think so what I like about Tua is I know he's connected to Tyreek Hill, right? And I think there's rumors that this is his last year. So to me, I think they're gonna have and he also has Jalen Waddle. I think they're gonna go out and get a tight end, right? If they get a tight end, I think that team can be really, really good, right? I know he was, I think we talked about it earlier. He was one of the leading passing yards quarterback in the league this year, right? And so if he can put a little more, put together a few more touchdowns, run the ball just a little bit, I think he can climb up into the top 10 pretty easily, right? So let's talk about the guys above him right now. Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, Justin Fields, Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, right? So the ones that I want to pick out there, right, would be Brock Purdy, Justin Fields, Dak Prescott. And then Drake May and he's above him right now as well. And so what's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? That's 6 people, right? So I think he would be, right at QB 10. And I think that's totally doable. Because I have talked about it already. I don't love Drake May. Dak Prescott we already kind of know who he is. I know Tua has been in the league a couple years already, but I do feel like he can take a step forward, right? And so that's a little bit of my hot take for the QB there. Real quickly, my running back is Najee Harris. I think we all hate on Arthur Smith, but I do think he is a very good offensive coordinator for running backs. And so he is all the way down at RB 21, right? And so I think he can jump up pretty easily. I don't think shoot, I'm forgetting his name as well. I don't think Jalen Warren is Warren. I think he's an okay running back, right? And so Najee Harris, I think, can put together a really, really good year, and I think he could climb on up there. Maybe not all the way in the top 10, maybe more like a top 15 kind of guy. But where he's going in startups, I got him in a recent 2 tight end startup at 10-10. I got him at 11-2 in another startup, and then he went 10-2 in another startup. I didn't get him there, but like he's going in the 10th and 11th round. So to me, that's really, really good value. My other guy for wide receiver is Tank Dell. I just think he was already on his way, to get into the top 10. He got injured, and I think he will put together a really good year. He's connected to CJ Stroud. That guy is amazing. And then tight ends, I think one of those Green Bay tight ends that puts together a whole season could be really, really good. We know the landscape of tight ends is kind of like all over the place. And so we already, we know there's a couple really good ones that are getting old. And then Brock Bowers is coming in. We have Sam Laporta and Trey McBride that are already, really, really good. But I do think it's pretty wide open at the top, 8 to 15 is pretty wide open right now. And so another one I really, really like is Jatavian Sanders, but I didn't want to put him in there yet because it really will depend on where he goes and if he's used right away.
Yeah, so a couple of quick thoughts. Jatavian Sanders, when you were talking about Tua getting a tight end, I immediately thought
Yeah.
Jatavian Sanders would fit. He's fast.
Yep.
So it kind of fits with what Mike McDaniel likes to do.
Yep.
And then I mean Tua, I fully support. I think that one of the reasons why he's lower right now, one, there's concern about Tyreek Hill, but two,
Yep.
Tua is playing on the 5th-year option right now. He doesn't have a deal past this year, and generally speaking, dynasty players get kind of get the ick when players don't have a contract
So
past the year they're on, and so that might be part of the reason why he's a little bit low right now too.
And I think that possibly can, light a fire under him, and he'll want to play really well to, if he doesn't get that contract, then maybe he moves away from Miami. I don't think that will happen, but maybe he does. But he's going to have to play really well, and so I think, say he plays really well, he'll probably, that will be really good for his stock, and I think he will be back up in that top 10.
For sure. Also, real quick, Jalen Warren, he actually played high school football out by me in Salt Lake East High,
Cool.
where they filmed High School Musical. For those of you who are into that sort
Wow.
of thing,
Some trivia.
so
Hey-o.
good time. Yeah. Anyways, my quarterback that I came up with, I had Kyler, which is cheating a little bit because he's technically QB 12 right now, but he's still outside the top 10. But I just
Yep.
think, he's 1 year removed from the ACL surgery. I think he plays a full year. There's some guys that, there's usually a little bit of shuffling in the top 10. And so he's kind of one that could sneak in. The one that's a little more, out there, a little more hot takey is Jaden Daniels, which if you haven't been able to tell, I'm a big Jaden Daniels guy. I think especially if he goes to somewhere like Atlanta, where they have a lot of passing talent and a good coaching staff, they kind of come from that McVay tree. I think it's wheels up for Jaden Daniels. Ron and I both have the same running back here in Javonte Williams. Again,
Yeah.
he's coming off of the ACL injury. I think he had an ACL and an MCL. And so he started to look a little bit better towards the end of last year. It's year 2 in the Sean Payton offense. He's running back 15 currently. So I think he's got a shot there. Kind of more of a dark horse guy would be Kendre Miller. He was a really good running back prospect coming out. He didn't do a ton last year. He kind of played, third fiddle. But I mean, Jamal Williams, I think he's awful. And so I think Kendre Miller is going to cut into that. And
I think they could cut him. He's a good they did a disservice for the Saints, signing him with that amount of money, and I think he's a good candidate for cut.
For sure. I think Kendre Miller takes over that RB2 role, and I could see him kind of fill in that, back when Kamara had Mark Ingram in New Orleans. I could see them kind of doing that, and Ingram was a borderline top 10 guy there for a little while. Wide receiver, Drake London. I think a competent offensive coaching staff, they're going to run that same system, that McVay offensive system. He's down at wide receiver 21. He was an ultra talented wide receiver prospect coming out. He got misused for the last 2 years. I think people have cooled on him a little bit, but I think if Atlanta gets, this is a little dependent on Atlanta getting some kind of a quarterback. I've heard rumors, Justin Fields, which I think is still an upgrade over Desmond Ridder. Think what you want about Justin Fields. It's still he's still an NFL quarterback, right? So That one's a little bit dependent on someone capable of throwing him the ball, but Drake London has all the talent in the world, and now hopefully a good offensive system. And then the last one for tight end, Michael Mayer. He kind of took a backseat to Dalton Kincaid and Sam Laporta as like the rookie, tight ends who kind of set the world on fire. More
Yeah.
Laporta than Kincaid, but Michael Mayer's out in Vegas. They don't have a ton of skill talent out there outside of Devontae Adams. It's really Jacoby Myers. Michael Mayer is probably the other best option or receiving option on that team. The Raiders just got Luke Getsy, who used Cole Kmet quite a bit in that offense. The tight ends were featured pretty heavily, so I think Mayer is going to be a pretty good focal point in that offense, and could definitely sneak into the top 10 there.
And then Justin Fields is kind of rumored to Las Vegas as well. And so, I think if, Getsy, as he knows Justin Fields. So I really like that one a lot. I think we kind of talked about it with those Green Bay. I actually like Michael Mayer more than those Green Bay tight ends. And so I do think he could leap over in Njoku, Ferguson. Kittle's getting old. Like I said, Kittle, Kelsey, Andrews, those are all guys getting older. I even could see him possibly, if he has a really good year, jumping Pitts. Because Pitts was not one of those guys that the new Atlanta coaches talked about. I don't know, don't want to read into anything there, but I do think that there is a little bit of love lost with Kyle Pitts.
For sure. Well, and they talked about what a good run blocker he was today.
I saw
too,
that
instead of a receiving option, which
I saw that.
maybe Kyle Pitts' destiny is just to be misused. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yep.
All right. Last question here we got from the Discord was which free agent wide receiver is going to get the Christian Kirk award? So, aka who gets the huge deal that surprises everyone.
So our guy that was on the cover, once we saw this question, I was trying to think of. I went back and looked at our free agent show that we had, and it will really kind of depend on if Calvin Ridley does not get re-signed, because if he does, I don't think he's going to get this crazy big deal. But if he does go out there, it could possibly cut into Marquise Brown. But I do think the guy is Marquise Brown. I think, to me, he's one of the best ones on the market. So it's kind of like, it's kind of like an easier pick per se. But I think the reason I picked him is because, he didn't have this great year. I know he had some injuries last year. I think he's been injured quite a bit during through his career so far. But I do think he's somebody that could be a really, really good asset on a team, even if he comes back to Arizona, which I don't know if that will happen, but I do think somebody will throw money at him, and I think he will kind of get that same kind of deal. I don't know about the same kind of deal, but like a good amount of money, and people are going to be like, wow, there's no way I would have thought he would get that amount of money. And so Marquise Brown, and I do think he will be somebody that will be pretty good. Like when we were talking about Bryce Young in Carolina, I was like, oh, maybe I think they need somebody bigger, but I think, hey, that he could be a solid guy, so I just think it will depend on the team. But I think Marquise Brown is the one that kind of stuck out for me.
Same. I agree, and I kind of had some stats to help back that up. So he's been in the NFL for 5 years. 3 of those seasons he had 100+ targets. That would have been 4, but he missed 3 games this year, and he still had 94. So he's been pretty involved in the different offenses he's been in. And I mean, we've seen the NFL. They covet speed. Hollywood is still super fast, regardless of what you think. I don't think he's a wide receiver 1, but he's definitely fast enough. Teams might think they could get usage out of him, and there's a ton of teams with a ton of cap room who are desperate for wide receivers. The Patriots, Titans, Panthers, Bears all have a ton of cap space and aren't the greatest situations, so they might have to throw a little extra money to convince them to come. And I could see it, and honestly, I would kind of like it in Carolina, but
and then another one, you put him on there, but I think the Bears would be like opposite of DJ Moore. I know they do a little bit of the same thing, but I think it'd be say Justin Fields stays there, they trade away that first, and they just bolster their team. Maybe they don't even get a wide receiver, or maybe they do, but like I think that could be really, really good for DJ Moore and even Justin Fields if he were to stay there. But then I also like I said, I like the Panthers a lot. The Titans, and the Patriots, as well.
I mean, the Titans, it was more just because they
Yeah,
have really no one. I mean,
yeah,
Treylon Burks isn't who we thought he was going to be or
no,
hoped he was going to be, and so they need someone pretty desperately.
yep,
But I think Chicago would be cool if they
yeah,
signed Hollywood, and they kept DJ Moore, they draft Caleb Williams, and then maybe they use the 109 pick they have to get like a Roma Dunze, and then all of a sudden
woo,
Chicago's got a pretty smoking talent.
yeah,
At offense there. That'd be pretty fun. So,
that would be cool.
but
All right. I just want to thank you again, all anybody that threw a question in there and from the
mhm.
Discord. We really appreciate it. I felt like this was it made us think a little bit, and I thought it was pretty fun.
For sure. And if you guys have other questions, feel free to join the Dynasty Theory Discord. We're all in there. Thank you for all the questions. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we'll be back next week, and we'll catch you next
Little
time.
little teaser. I think I'm gonna get in the itch to start a Fantasy Effect Listener League number 4.
Let's
I
go.
wanted to get a little bit closer to draft because I think I want to do rookies included.
Oh,
So
baby.
if you're interested, just wait till I
Maybe
get it going.
after the NFL Combine, which is next
Yeah.
week, maybe
Yes,
we can
sir.
kick one off.
Yes, sir.
Oh, baby. Now you got me all excited. All right. Let's get
All
out of
right.
here.
Peace.
See you guys.